Benchmark, the voice of business. Presented by LMD.
On this edition of Benchmark, the CEO of Colombo City Centre, Anand Sundaram, joins us on the program today as we discuss Sri Lanka's mixed developments and the real estate sector. The LMD Nielsen Business Confidence Index remains stable. We discuss business sentiment with Sharang Pant, Nielsen's managing director. And LMD columnist Shiran Fernando wraps up the show with his take on Sri Lanka's macro outlook. That's the lineup for Benchmark.
Hello and welcome to Benchmark, the Big Picture Business Program. I'm Savitri Rodrigo. We are continuing our focus on the real estate sector today, and in our studios is the Chief Executive Officer of Colombo City Centre, Anand Sundaram, to provide more insights into the various challenges facing the property development sector as well as the opportunities that could be arising. Thank you for coming into our studio today, Anand. Lovely to have you.
A pleasure, and thank you for calling me over.
How do you view the real estate landscape in Sri Lanka at the moment?
I think it's a very exciting phase that the country and Colombo City in particular is going through. This is a stage of metamorphosis where you will see transformation, and this has been very often witnessed in great cities. This is a point of inflection where the transformation takes over, and that will make the difference from Colombo becoming a megapolis very soon.
If you look at the real estate sector in total, what are the key trends that you're observing, from the development projects that have been undertaken and everything that's moving forward?
I think very broadly, the real estate is now focused. Currently, you will see first a lot of residential supply coming up, then the hotel, and then the commercial space is slowly heating up, and then the mall is also going to come in. So it is going towards a point when we are getting Colombo to be a higher density living area rather than a low density living area, which means you will see a lot more vertical structures coming in, a lot more combined living and an urban space coming up for the urban fabric of people here.
Now, this concentration on Colombo, is that wise? Why not spread everything around so that we have a network of roads and infrastructure maybe that can bring it all together?
There's an old saying, it says money goes where there's money to be made. If businesses have to be successful, and yet there has to be a demand for that, it will be to high net worth areas. For example, in Sri Lanka, if you look at it, Colombo is one positive area. Some places in south of Sri Lanka, or perhaps in some other pockets. Clearly, Colombo is much more ahead of every other city or every other location. And therefore, this becomes the natural area where real estate developers will focus on, and this is where the play is going to be in the future.
Well, is the prevailing investment climate in Sri Lanka conducive to the large-scale investment and ventures that we are hoping it will attract?
Yes, I've heard that, and there's some concerns on that being expressed. But you look at it at a macro picture. How many countries in the world have a GDP of, say, 6% or 6.5%? Very, very few. And if you have that kind of a galloping GDP, obviously it will fuel these kind of economic spurts and growth and this kind of real estate developments. And that's how the whole economy grows, that's how the whole country grows. So I'm sure it's very sustainable in the long run.
What about relevant legislation, policy, strategy, and also cost of land? Because Sri Lanka being an island, we have a very limited amount of land area. How do all these actually impact the bigger picture of real estate development?
I think, to be fair to the government, they're learning very fast. We brought in a lot of new norms and policies and safety levels and measures from Singapore and from all the other best consultants. And the Sri Lankan government was very fast to adopt and adapt all these policies and tenets. And they are issuing legislation fast. Yes, it can be faster, but I'm sure there's a positive movement in the right direction. They've also been very amenable to things like, we said, if tourists have to come in and spend money and consume goods, then it's better that we give them VAT refunds. And the government is very open to that. They have announced it as part of the budget. So I think, yes, it's getting there, and we would like faster speed. But to be fair to them, the government also needs a certain amount of movement to be able to justify whatever rational steps they're taking. On the land piece, land is always short. Earlier, the saying used to be, you can't make land anymore. But that was proved wrong by all the reclamations that Dubai has done. And if you look at our own city and our own backyard, look at the amount of reclamation we are doing. Land is in short supply, yes, but with the port city coming up and more and more individual apartments giving way to high density multi-use complexes, I think it'll even out.
What about cost structures in the long run? Whether it is skilled labor, whether it is again cost of land, which is quite prohibitive, especially in Colombo, and all the other things that sort of add to your cost structures. How do we compare when it comes to other Asian countries, which are also in this burgeoning stage?
The land cost is still acceptable, within acceptable limits. It's the availability of labor, it's availability of qualified and skilled labor, which is a current problem now. I'm hoping that that will go away, because I'm looking at and I'm witnessing a sort of a reverse migration of Sri Lankans who have been to the Middle East and they're now coming back forward. Within our own company, for example, we've hired about 4 of them who want to come back home. And I'm hoping that this is a trend that will be here to stay, and therefore get more skilled people onto the country, into this exciting area.
What makes Sri Lanka an attractive investment destination when it comes to real estate?
I think the promise that it holds. If you look at the projections, the tourism is growing by leaps and bounds. The number of expats which need to come into the country to build something like a port city, or all these developments which are happening here, or the new development of the megapolis, they will require a lot more people to come in. When that is the kind of talent that needs to come in, obviously they need more accommodation and quality accommodation. For them to stay, it's a no-brainer for people to invest in high-quality condos.
What are the major challenges that people like you are facing?
I would say that any pioneer is going to face many challenges. Colombo City Centre, for example, is a unique one, which is a 3-use mixed-use asset in one single building. It's never been done before in the country. So there are challenges to do with legislative challenges, approvals, who owns what, who will approve of what, how do we go around this and how do we go around that, or indeed acceptance in terms of the customers. I mean, they can't believe that we have 3 dedicated entrances to each one. We have to compartmentalize each asset where each one doesn't knock into the other. Or for example, on the execution part, we have issues as shortage of skilled manpower. That is a problem that we're facing, and I'm hoping and wishing it'll go away, but it's going to stay here for some time. We also have challenges in terms of getting to the fruition bit and making sure that hopefully we'll make money, because if there is a cost and time overrun, then the project viability becomes questionable.
So let's discuss more on this real estate sector after a commercial break, Anand. Coming up, we ask Anand Sundaram whether Sri Lanka has the potential to invest in international real estate, and also which segments of the local real estate market are likely to witness growth in the medium term. So please stay with us. We'll be back soon.
When we entered the industry in 1995, a new star was born as a fully owned subsidiary of People's Bank. For those seeking to grow their businesses, PLC provided the seed. We are not only Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company, but also the largest non-banking financial institution. Welcome to a new dawn for the nation. Introducing People's Leasing and Finance, PLC.
LMD is making waves, airwaves. The next big thing from Sri Lanka's pioneering business journal, LMD Podcast, now online. Listen to our articles on the go at www.lmd.lk. Select, play, listen. It's that simple.
We understand that savings provide for life's special moments. That's why we were the first bank to introduce an incentivized savings scheme, Pathum Vimana. We changed how a nation felt about savings because we believe in banking beyond transactions. HNB, your partner in progress.
Thank you for staying with Benchmark. We are back to our discussion on the real estate industry with Anand Sundaram, Chief Executive Officer of Colombo City Centre. Anand, how would you respond to claims that Sri Lanka will witness an oversupply in the luxury segment of real estate?
I think there's a fair point. Having said that, I also believe that fluctuations will happen in every industry, and especially so in real estate condo industry, where the supply and demand one is always ahead of the other. In this country, at the current point in time, there is a possibility that the supply of luxury and high-end condos is ahead of the demand. But if I look at the numbers, if I look at the statistics and start forecasting into the future, I'm sure that in another 5 years' time, it's going to be a reversal where there's going to be a demand for more luxury condos. So, yeah, it's okay. I mean, it's not a 1 day or a 1 year game. Real estate goes in for, it's counted in 10 and 20 years. So I don't think it's a problem.
Do you see room for property developers to work together to market our projects overseas?
I think absolutely yes. And that is something that we need to do. We are not seen as a force outside this city or the country where we say that come to Sri Lanka or come to Colombo because A, B, C, D are the plus points. I think we are very fragmented today, and although we're making some feeble attempts initially, there is a lot more scope for us to be united and market this country and the potential it is for.
Does Sri Lanka per se have the potential to actually go out and invest in international real estate? This is turning the tables on the outside.
Yes, it is. I'm not sure I know the pedigree of all the developers in Sri Lanka well enough yet. The international markets are extremely competitive, and in any geography, a person who's been there long enough holds sway, and the person has a competitive advantage. But yes, I mean, people do aspire, and they have to jump boundaries and geographies and set up shop in other countries. I'm sure it will happen. I'm also hoping that people will be very cognizant that if we take a country's brand image outside, it has to be towards bettering and towards a situation where we offer a much more enhanced product than what the local guys would.
Anand, do we as a country have the support infrastructure and the support manpower to feed and to sustain the development projects that we now have going?
I think that infrastructure is one area that we need to really look into, and urgently so. If I look at Colombo, for example, the number of high rises that are coming in point to a very high density living in the next 5 years or so. I believe we need to work really hard on infrastructure related to travel, to power, to sewerage lines, and all kinds of infrastructure, amenities and services that the city can offer. That's an area that we need to really work towards.
Anand, which segments of the local real estate market do you see having the most potential for growth in the medium term?
Generally, it's a mid-segment which grows the fastest. The exceptions to this rule are, of course, the high-end destinations like resort destination. Fortunately, Colombo is a reasonably balanced megapolis, and it seems to be poised in the right direction. So you will see a maximum growth in the mid-segment of the market here.
How do you see the future prospects for integrated mixed development projects?
But that is the future. What I see here is some sporadic mixed-use developments, and bulk of it being apartments. In most cities, it is you hardly find any freestanding residential or hotel apartment, they'll be generally mixed use assets because that's where the maximum synergies are. That's what is most appreciated by the end users and customers, as also the developers like. So you will see a change in the trend towards mixed use assets.
Do you see the character, the persona of Colombo changing dramatically, where it may lose its old world charm, which has been somewhat of the exciting recipe when it comes to tourism specifically?
It's a tough one. Okay, let me try and answer it in a different way. I don't think it is the spirit of the people that will change. It's unlikely so. But if you're asking me, will people transition from individual houses into swanky apartments? It is bound to happen. Will people behavior change from wanting to buy from smaller shops, gades, to malls? It is bound to happen. So these changes are good. These changes are positive because they empower customers. They give the customer a better value for her money. And it also improves lives. Gone are the days when people have to sweat it out and labor out in the garden or maintain the houses, or maintain the repairs and maintenance. Why have this when you can use the time more productively to create wealth for the family and the country? So it's not taking away from the spirit of where Sri Lanka or Sri Lankans are. It's more to enhance the lifestyle and increase the time available.
So some very exciting prospects ahead of us. Thank you very much, Anand, for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me over.
So we've been speaking to the Chief Executive Officer of Colombo City Centre, Anand Sundaram. On the other side, we have Anushan Selvaraja.
Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company is now the nation's largest and highest rated finance company with 2 international ratings. Let us move the nation as one with People's Leasing and Finance PLC.
LMD is making waves, airwaves. The next big thing from Sri Lanka's pioneering business journal, LMD Podcast, now online. Listen to our articles on the go at www.lmd.lk. Select, play, listen. It's that simple.
Nearly 60% of all businesses in our country are SMEs. Some of our most growth-oriented financial solutions have been customized to serve this sector. That's why we have invested over 500 billion rupees to support the backbone of our economy. Because we believe in banking beyond transactions. HNB, your partner in progress.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Anand Sundaram. Now for a closer look at the latest on the LMD Nielsen Business Confidence Index. Joining me is the Managing Director of Nielsen, Sharang Pat. Welcome back to the show, Sharang. Now, the BCI has remained stable for the most part in recent times. Now, what are the likely reasons for this in your opinion?
Business index has remained at 127, 128. Last month it was 107. That hasn't really changed. I think given that the inflation has more or less remained same, businesses are still looking at certain cues of how prices will move, how investment will move later on, and how consumption demand picks up, post which there might be changes happening to the index. And we see that in the consumer confidence as well, which from previous month's number of 58 is still around that 59-60 number. So they also haven't reacted because they are eagerly waiting for inflation to move down, post which there will be a consumption uptick.
So what do business people expect when it comes to the economic and business prospects?
That's where there's a slight drop from the previous month's number of 23% of respondents saying the economy might improve. This month there's a drop of about 16%. I think again it's the worries around interest rates, around ease of doing business and inflation, which is keeping the sentiments on economy still muted. Yeah, as things change, maybe we might see this changing as well.
So what do respondents cite as the most pressing national issues today?
So I'll take it in two ways. What are respondents saying as national issues and business issues? Business issues, almost all of them, 100% of them still say high taxes. Taxes which impact consumers, taxes which impact businesses. All of them are saying that's the probably the topmost issue, followed by interest rates, followed by the currency value as well. These are the top three when it comes to business. When it comes to consumers, they're talking about poverty, they're talking about pressure on their consumption expenditure or disposable income, which is linked to inflation. They're talking about education facilities. So post the SITEM issue, there's looking at some changes, an increase in the number of university seats, because that's also linked to the labor supply. Businesses say that there are openings, there are jobs available, especially in the apparel sector, but there is no supply. Whereas on the supply side, consumers or the students who are coming out, they are possibly looking at higher level jobs for which the supply from the manufacturing or the marketing side is not there. So education, inflation, and somehow managing the poverty levels, these are the top two or three things that consumers also talk about.
Right. What would be your projections then going forward for the BCI, Sriram?
It's a tough question. You know the reason why. Let's wait for the next couple of months to see which way some of the results go, and therefore what will be the changes on the economy policies. The government has about 2 years to go, and that will determine how the trend moves forward from here.
Thank you very much for joining us, Sriram.
Thank you.
That was the Managing Director of Nielsen, Sharang Pant. We'll be right back after a short commercial break. Stay tuned.
When we entered the industry in 1995, a new star was born as a fully owned subsidiary of People's Bank. For those seeking to grow their businesses, PLC provided the seed. We are not only Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company, but also the largest non-banking financial institution. Welcome to a new dawn for the nation. Introducing People's Leasing and Finance, PLC.
LMD is making waves, airwaves. The next big thing from Sri Lanka's pioneering business journal, LMD Podcast, now online. Listen to our articles on the go at www.lmd.lk. Select, play, listen. It's that simple.
Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company is now the nation's largest and highest rated finance company with 2 international ratings. Let us move the nation as one with People's Leasing and Finance PLC.
Gami Pubudua, our microfinance offering makes it possible for the youth of this country who have a viable business plan but lack the funds to realize their dreams. We are committed to grassroots level entrepreneur development because we believe in banking beyond transactions. HNB, your partner in progress.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Anand Sundaram. Now for a closer look at the latest on the economy. Joining me is economist and LMD columnist Sriram Fernando. Welcome back to the show, Sriram. Now, just to start off, tell us how is Sri Lanka faring on the FDI front?
So if you look at 2017, there was a significant pickup from what we had in 2016 and 15, almost FDI doubling to about 1.6, 1.7 billion. So you could say relative to the last few years, it's a good performance, but compared to what other countries in the region are attracting, the kinds of like the Vietnam type countries, which are attracting far more, So there's a lot to catch up, or at least to do in terms of performance. But what is noticeable is actually this is more a reflection of maybe policy becoming much more clear, investors getting a bit more comfortable, and the sentiment changing, which is a good sign. And it took about 2 years for that to happen. If you look at what's driving it, I think you have to also take into the fact that there is about close to 300 million of it from the Hambantota lease agreement, which concluded towards the end of 2017. Then you have money inflows into the port city as well, plus a lot of the others, I think about 50% going into infrastructure. So the remaining 50, I think it's a mixture of things going into tourism and things going into export manufacturing and manufacturing in general. So ideally, as we go further, I think we should try to attract with the trade and investment strategy, attract more FDI into more export manufacturing and services, which hopefully we'll see that trend moving forward. But I think it's very important at this juncture not to lose the momentum.
So what were the positives that came out of this Invest Sri Lanka for event that was held in Singapore recently?
So I think it's a reiteration of a lot of the policies that the government has been talking about. And a lot of it is also banking on the Singapore-Sri Lanka FTA, which was signed, which I think was a key milestone. Once again, the document is still not out there, but from the parts that we understand, it's very much promoting a trade investment nexus, looking in particular on how to attract more joint ventures companies like that to come and set up shop here. And I think on the Singaporean side, there's a clear interest in terms of getting some of their SMEs activated, them plugging into the South Asian region, which now they're looking as a potential growth opportunity as well. For our interest, I think it's largely how do we use this and integrate more into the ASEAN region. And I think that was sort of the case that's been underlined in that conference as well, amidst trying to get more capital inflows into Sri Lanka's capital markets as well.
Now you did say that we are just trying to bring in more investment into the country, but how is that possible with all this political uncertainty that is going on in the country right now? Because it seems like even the political parties don't know what's happening. How does this affect our economy?
So it's definitely a big distraction, and as I mentioned earlier, there was a momentum that was building with the stability in the economy happening, export numbers doing better, FTA numbers, as I mentioned, doing much better. There was stability in terms of the currency, and suddenly you have this political uncertainty. So, at the face of it, I think in the initial few weeks we've seen that volatility, but since then I think we've seen markets being more calm, and key policymakers such as the central bank governor, some of the key economic related ministers coming out and saying, the macro is important, we should not lose this momentum, we should continue to prioritize and move on reforms. And I think that's a healthy sign, at least the fact that the economy will not be lost in all this. And I think that's really important for the business community and the private sector, because come the 1st of April, there are a lot of changes as well with the new Inland Revenue Act, the new Forest Management Act is also moving. Certain other reforms are there. The budget 2018 needs to be implemented. So if this does not get resolved, it puts a lot of things in the air. But as long as I think we build on the stability and keep that momentum going, and let the politics maybe take care of itself, I think 2018 we should have a relatively okay year as well.
Thank you very much for joining us, Shiran.
Pleasure.
That was economist and LMD columnist Shiran Fernando. Thank you for watching Benchmark, and we hope to see you again next time.